What's up guys, Intellitech Studios here, and today we're going to be doing the full review of the iPhone 12 in 2022. How well does Apple's not so new phone hold up in 2022? Well, let's be honest, this video isn't going to be all that interesting in terms of seeing how well this phone works in 2022, because obviously it works great. The iPhone 13 is the newest phone that you can get right now, so the better question is, it has a very similar design to the iPhone 12, so if you want a really modern iPhone with 5G, is the iPhone 12 a good option to still get a really good phone, but save a nice chunk of change? And I can say right off the bat, without even getting into it, that the answer is yes. But we'll go into more specifics at the end of the video about whether or not you should buy this and what kind of good prices you can find this for. So there's a lot of things we can talk about with the iPhone 12. I've been daily driving this phone for quite a while, about a week now. I've been using it on AT&T with 5G, and I'll be talking about the experiences now. So first off, let's get this case off so we can talk about the design. So anyways, this is the blue iPhone 12, which is objectively the best color. That's just a fact. This is the standard iPhone 12. This is not the mini, although you can get the mini. It looks just like this, only obviously smaller. And you can also get the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max. This review is mainly focusing on the standard iPhone 12, but most of the things, save for the third camera, would also apply to the 12 Pro, and the 12 Pro Max and the 12 Mini would have smaller displays, different battery life, and a few little differences here and there, but those being the biggest two, and obviously price as well. So again, this is mainly referring to the standard iPhone 12, but the general consensus of how well this works can be applied to the entire line of iPhone 12 series devices. So we can see right here in the case of the iPhone 12, this is the first iPhone to bring back the classic square design language of the earlier iPhones. So we can see a very, very square phone here. So lovely flat sides. Can we stand it up on the sides? Yes, we can. So you can actually stand the phone up on its side, which is something you can't do with older iPhones. Yeah, this iPhone 6s Plus is just too rounded for that sort of thing. So if you are looking at size comparisons, if you're comparing the iPhone 12 to something, I don't have too many iPhones to compare this to, but if we compare this to the iPhone 6s Plus, we can see that the 6s Plus is a little bit wider and a good amount taller. This is not probably going to be the device that you would compare it to, but hey, maybe you have a 6s Plus out there and you're thinking about finally upgrading since your 6s Plus is about to run out of iOS updates. In that case, this is a pretty good comparison, because if you actually look at the screens, you still have a good amount of usable screen increase despite, this being a much bigger device. The screen is obviously very bezel filled and a standard 16.9 aspect ratio, 1080p, IPS, all that sort of thing. With the iPhone 12, you step up to an OLED display, and this is a very, very nice display. So this display is really nice. We can see right now I was trying to unlock my face with Face ID, but it was struggling a little bit. We can see text on this is very crispy. And of course you do have the notch that a lot of the iPhones are just well known towards now, but honestly it doesn't look that bad. It didn't really bother me all that much, and I actually prefer it to the hole punch that's on the Galaxy Note 10 Plus that I'm filming this with. So I still would prefer a design where you just have a basic forehead. I would much rather have that. Sorry about the iris scanner, but I would much rather just have a forehead. You can see the forehead right here on the Note 9. It's a very thin bezel, but it houses everything in it, and there's no obstruction to the display. I do prefer that to the notch. Personally, you can see the little infrared sensor that only picks up on the camera, so that's not there in real life. Don't worry about that. So that's just going to be personal preference. So if you've never had an iPhone before with a notch, of course, if you're upgrading from an iPhone 11, iPhone 10R, iPhone 10, then you're going to be used to this notch. And the notch is a little bit smaller on the iPhone 13, but I don't really know if it makes that much of a difference. I generally can't tell at a first glance from the front whether a 12 or a 13 is the one that's being held, but it is there. There is a bit of a discrepancy there. So you do have the notch, you have the earpiece right there, front-facing camera, you have your Face ID camera, all that lovely stuff. So there isn't really too much to say about that. The notch is definitely something where you can't really have someone tell you, oh yes, this is good, oh yes, this is bad, oh yes, this will bother you or it won't, because that's going to be all up to personal preference. For me personally, I don't like it. I would much rather have just a basic forehead, a nice thin bezel on the top. In fact, I would even rather just have a normal bezel to that, because this, again, is flat, it doesn't get in the way, and it gives you something to grip when you're holding the phone without a case. But most people are probably going to prefer the bezel-less aspect ratio to this, and it looks very good on the iPhone 12. And one thing that's really nice is that while the iPhone 12 replaces the iPhone XR and the iPhone 11, I felt that the iPhone 11 and XR were a little bit too wide in the hands, especially if you put a protective case on it, like a UAG and OtterBox and Scipio Dual Pro, that sort of thing. I found the iPhone 10 and 11 were just too wide because of the way that the bezels were and the curved edges. The XR just felt weird in the hands. It almost felt like it was a complete square, and that was not very comfortable. It felt too wide in the hands, and it overall just was not comfortable to hold unless you didn't have a case on it. And you obviously don't want to have a case. You don't want to not have a case on an iPhone like this, because if you do break the back glass, it is incredibly hard to replace. Unlike a Galaxy, where you can very easily just pry off the back panel and replace it for $20, $30, maybe $60 depending on the place you take it for labor costs. On an iPhone like this, unless you have one of those crazy laser machines, you would have to replace the entire rear housing, which I don't like. That's a really bad design choice, and if you try to replace it yourself, you might mess up the camera as well. So the back is not the same. What is it? I forgot what iPhone calls it. What Apple calls it? The sapphire, whatever they call the weird screen technology that's supposed to make the screen a lot stronger. I forgot what that was, but it's whatever they call it. It works good on the front, but it's not on the back, so you don't have any extra protection on the back glass as far as drops. So again, you're going to want to cover this up either with a case, or if you're mainly worried about the back and you're not worried about the front, you could get a screen protector for the front, get something like a D-brand skin for the back, although I don't know if D-brand still sells skins for the iPhone 12. They just started getting rid of all of their old skins, but of course you have Sophie Guard, you have Slick Wraps, there's options there. Although I rarely ever see anyone who has an iPhone that uses skins, but it is an option. So you have plenty of options. Personally, this is my favorite case. Although the back on this, the clear back, does get scratched up pretty easily. But this personally is my favorite case, and my fiance's as well, because this was his iPhone. So, that all is really good. The build quality is really good. The square edges are really nice. But just keep in mind, you want to keep the back covered up, because if you break that, you are not going to have a fun time trying to get that repaired or replaced. So I do love the way it looks. I do love the way it feels. And for what it's worth, it does feel to me like the back is a lot grippier than glass on other phones. I know this is an old one to compare it to, but if I compare this to something like an S7 Edge or just any Galaxy phone that I have, at least, perhaps the new ones are different, but this on the iPhone feels a lot grippier. So if you're the kind of person where as long as you have a good grip on the phone, you're not going to drop it in the first place, then you could probably get away with not using a case on this, because it is fairly grippy and I don't have any problems holding it. Although it's not nearly as comfortable to hold without a case as something like an iPhone 11 or 10R, because while those are a little bit more cumbersome with a case, without a case, those are more comfortable because of the rounded sides. This kind of digs into my hand a little bit, and that's always been a problem with the iPhone 4s and 5s. So it's not as comfortable to hold. So again, you're probably going to want to put a case on it to kind of smooth out those edges. So that's just something to keep in mind. but most people use cases anyways, so I'm sure most people don't care, and for most people the build quality is not going to matter too much either. So because this is a thinner strand of aluminum, if you do use this out of case and you do drop it on the edges, the aluminum will get scuffed up pretty easily. It will dent pretty easily. And if you happen to catch a really bad drop right on the corner where the aluminum meets the glass, that could cause the aluminum to push into the glass and crack it on either side. So you just want to be careful, especially on the bottom, where on the bottom the actual display connector is. So if you drop it on the bottom really hard, you could damage the actual ribbon that connects the display. So then maybe the glass wouldn't crack, but you might see green lines or purple banding or something like that on the screen if you have a really bad drop. So again, you want to make sure to be careful. But the build quality otherwise is very nice. Now, if you get the Pro, you get stainless steel. On the standard 12, you just get aluminum, but it's still very nice aluminum. Feels good in the hands. Build quality is really good, and there's nothing to complain about there. As far as the physical overview of the device, on the bottom we have our lightning port, no USB Type-C. We do have a speaker grill right here and a fake speaker grill right there. Here's an antenna band. A lot of people have asked me about this. I know my fiance asked me about this when he first got the phone. He's like, what is that? That's the 5G antenna band, because this does have 5G, and the 5G works excellent as you would expect. So if you're the kind of person where you're like, I just want the cheapest iPhone that supports 5G, well, here you go. Go buy this. So there's that, another antenna band. We've got the power button, nice and large. Of course, you can hold the power button, and you get Siri for some reason. I actually don't. How do I power off this phone? I don't think I've ever tried to power this off. That's interesting. It's actually something I never really thought about until now, because I have never turned off this phone. So I actually don't know how to turn it off. I don't know much about. I probably should have looked that up beforehand, but I kind of expected that to be a power button. But anyways, so holding the power button opens up Siri. There's probably a setting somewhere to turn this back into a power button. I'll update that in the description. On the sides, you do have your volume buttons. Again, nice and clicky. iPhone buttons are always really clicky. The way they're designed on the inside makes them extra super clicky and satisfying. You do have a mute switch, which I love. I do love this feature on iPhones, the fact that you can very easily mute your phone. So the classic thing that everyone's going to think about whenever you talk about this, or that I think about when someone mentions a mute switch, I'm going to the movies, I'm got my popcorn and everything, watching usually a Marvel movie in my experience, and you got to mute your phone. I don't like to have to turn my phone off, because I might miss a notification, or not really a notification, but I might then miss a notification that already came in that I hadn't read yet, more so. So I personally love this feature. You just flip it down. Once you see the orange, you know that it is muted. I don't know if you can see that. Silent mode off, silent mode is on, so now it's on silent. I usually have my phones on silent anyways, so I usually just leave this on. But of course, remember to, if you do sell this phone, remember to turn this back on, because I've actually sold an iPhone 6S and other iPhones to people, and they're like, hey, the speaker isn't working, and then I'm like, did you turn on the mute switch? And because I forget that I leave it on silent. They're like, oh yeah, I forgot to do that, sorry about that. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you are buying one or selling your old iPhone. Make sure to put this on, so that way people don't think the speakers don't work. But yeah, so very nice feature. I do still love that. That's very nice. And then on the top, you have nothing. On the side, you got the power button. I already talked about that. So that is pretty much the overview. You got your two cameras right there. You've got your standard camera and your wide angle camera, which is really nice. I really like the fact that, at least I'm pretty sure, let me double check. I'm pretty sure this was a wide angle camera. But is it, or is it a telephoto? I actually don't remember. Oh, it is. Okay. So it is a wide angle camera, which is fantastic. I love that. There are so many dual cameras out there, Note 9, where they have a second camera, but it's a telephoto. I get the telephoto cameras are really useful because they make it to where you can get better quality when you zoom in, apparently. But every phone that I've tried that had a telephoto camera, the telephoto camera's pictures didn't, at least to my eyes, look any better than the main camera with it just zoomed in. So I don't really get the appeal of the telephoto camera. Now, if the telephoto camera was much better quality on these phones, then sure. but a lot of times it just seems superfluous. So I would much rather have a wide angle camera, which is a lot more useful, and Apple gave us that. So that's really good. We've got our main camera, our wide angle camera, and our Apple's famous True Tone several tone flash module, which looks very nice and is on this lovely matte platform. On the Pro, I believe it's the other way around, where the glass is matte and this little bit is glossy. Now, the matte glass on the Pro is much more similar to something on the Note 20 Ultra, S22 Ultra, but personally, that does look nicer than this, because you can see it's already getting covered in fingerprints, but it's a lot slicker as well. So this does have some grip advantages, because I can grip onto it pretty easily if I, sort of hold on to it. It does that. Oop, I just swiped away an email. I did not mean to do that. Oh, what did I just do? So for some reason I was in my emails. Okay, well, I'll just hope that wasn't important. So, camera on this is really good. I actually recorded my Note 10 Plus review with this iPhone's camera. I also recorded my review of that Dyson over there, that Dyson Ball Total Clean, with this iPhone 12. And it's a little frustrating that when you're in the camera, you don't have any option to pause the video and then resume it. You have to just stop recording and then do another clip, and then have multiple clips that you then have to worry about later. So I don't like that. It would be nice if while recording you had the option to pause the recording but still keep recording, just have it not record for a couple seconds. That way you could go do something or move something or adjust your shot and not have to then go back later and stitch multiple files together. That is something that the Galaxy Notes allow you to do, and I'm pretty sure other Android phones do as well, but the iPhone does not. It's just all or nothing. It's either on or off, and that is it. You can take pictures while you record, of course, and you've got plenty of settings, slow motion, time lapse. I actually didn't really use any of these, but slow motion has always been great on iPhones, so that's always really nice. So, for example, here, I'm going to do a slow motion clip real quick, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Let's see, I'll do a slow motion real quick, and I'll just drop the case. And if we review this slow motion, we can, come on, there we go. We can see right there, the shutter's kind of glitching out a little bit, but you can see, yep, that's slow motion. So it works very well. It's very smooth, it looks really good. It's a little blurry, as you'd expect, but slow motion, it's always really hard to focus whenever you're in slow motion, so I can't really blame it for that. So slow motion is really cool. If you're the kind of person where you really love taking a lot of slow motion footage, then an iPhone might be for you. The only thing that really annoys me about iOS and just recording on the iPhone in general, or pictures or anything like that, is when I recorded the review of the Note 10 Plus, it was a pain. It was an absolute pain to get the footage from the iPhone off of the iPhone and onto my computer. There's no reason why Apple shouldn't allow you to, at the very least, plug the phone in and have instant access to the camera folder and be able to drag and drop files. I had to do some weird sketchy crap with iTunes and with the Photos app on Windows. It was just a whole mess, and it was really not intuitive at all, and I was not a fan of the process of moving videos off of the iPhone onto other areas. So while the iPhone is in many cases regarded to be the best video camera, and I can't necessarily disagree, although this is the newest phone that I have, so I don't really have the equivalent Galaxy Note or Pixel to compare it to, because this phone is from 2020, I think. Yeah, this is from 2020, and I don't have any 2020 phones. I have a 2019 Note 10 Plus. That's the newest Android phone I have. So there isn't much that I can compare this to, apples to apples. I swear I did not I swear I did not say that on purpose. But just if it's not intuitive to get the videos off of the camera to be able to edit them properly or color grade them or whatever it is that you need to do, then it's kind of hard to really say that it's the best camera, at least for video creators, at least for people that use their cameras for work and all that. Now, if you're an average person and you're only going to be sharing your photos to your computer, which you can do via the Photos app on your Mac and all that, and otherwise you're just sharing quick clips on TikTok and social media, or if you're uploading small clips straight to YouTube, then all of that is fine. And I did actually get so frustrated with the experience that in the case of the Dyson review, that I ended up just posting the Dyson review, the full clip, to YouTube. So that's why that review looks not as polished as some of my other reviews, because I got so frustrated with this thing that I just wanted to get it done and get it over with. And that's not a good experience. It really isn't, at least not to me. So while I do love recording videos on iPhones, especially now that they have the wide-angle camera, the actual process of dealing with the video after you've recorded it is not that great. So I needed to harp on that because I legitimately struggled with it for a very long time. And yeah, I get it. Like, you know, you could say, oh, you don't know how iPhones work, you were doing it wrong, whatever. But I'm not illiterate. I have a lot of technical experience, and I've been working with technology and phones and IT and all that for about a decade at this point. And this still should not be a problem, especially if something like an iPhone is designed for novice users. All this stuff should be intuitive and easy to use, and it's just, in the case of that, it's just not. So the camera is really good. The selfie camera in particular is really good. So if you're talking about just taking photos and videos, it's really good. So if you're taking photos, let's take a photo of this Galaxy Note 7. To focus on that. Boom. And yeah, the photo quality is excellent. Like, you can zoom in on this. Everything looks crispy. Very nice. 59%. Lovely. So pictures are really good. If I open up the selfie camera, if I flip this over, you can see right there. If I take a selfie, boom, right there. So there's my lovely face. You can see my, yeah. So you can zoom in. No comment. So, camera is really good on the iPhone 12, as you'd expect. I mean, is there really anything to say? It's still a flagship smartphone. It'd be really bizarre if this camera somehow wasn't good in 2022. So, yeah, it's the camera really good. No complaints there. So, now we'll go ahead and talk about the performance. The performance, it's buttery smooth. Now, iPhones in the past have had problems with forced closes and weird little issues like that. I haven't had anything like that. Now, I have had issues where certain apps, where I would literally be in an app. For example, this happened to me the other day where I was in Facebook and I was scrolling through my timeline on Facebook. And, you know, I don't want to open my Facebook because I don't want to show anyone's information. But I was scrolling through on Facebook, and I wanted to switch over to YouTube Music real quick to change my song. So I switched over to YouTube Music because there is no multitasking on this. You can't open two apps at once, which is unfortunate because we can see on my Galaxy Note 9, bam, two apps at the same time, and I'll reference this later. So you can't do that. You have to swipe through. Now, if you swipe up, you get access to all your apps. There's no close apps button, but honestly, I don't mind that too much because I find myself bumping that button by accident and closing things that I don't mean to close. So not having an all apps button isn't really a big deal, although ideally there would be an all apps button and it would just be like up in the corner or something like that. So instead of having an all apps button right here where you could bump it like on Android phones, so for example, if I don't want to show that, but this is an old Android phone, obviously, but, you know, if I press the All Apps button, you've got a close all right there, and that's very easy to bump. But on this, sure, it's good that there isn't that button there, but I would much rather just have a button, like, right up here in this corner. So it's impossible to press it accidentally, and you can just push that and all your apps are closed. Like, I think that would be the perfect middle ground solution. So there still is a Close All Apps button, but you can't press it accidentally. So Apple, if you could add that in new iOS, put a little Close Apps button right up there in the corner, and that would take care of that. But you swipe up, and you can get to all the apps. The swiping gestures on iPhones are a lot more intuitive than they were in the early days of the iPhone X. So all this is very nice. I remember trying an iPhone X right after it came out, and the swipe gestures were just very clunky, very unpolished. It just didn't feel like a good experience, to the point where at the time, was I buying an iPhone, I would have bought the 8 Plus. But These have been really, really optimized, and everything works good. I actually like the carousel look, like older Android phones, how they have the carousel look. This is so nice. I hate the fact that on newer Android phones it's just a stupid list now. So love this. This is really nice, but and you do still have the option to, if for you want to swipe multiple apps, you can just put a finger on each app and swipe it away. So you have options, but now, one cool thing is that if you're in an app, you can actually swipe through. Yeah, there you go. You can see you can actually swipe through different apps by simply swiping on the edge of the bar, which that's really cool. I do like that. But I kind of got sidetracked. I was explaining the bug that I had, where I was in Facebook and I switched over to YouTube Music to change a song, and then immediately switched back to Facebook. This whole thing was like maybe 5 or 10 seconds, and Facebook closed and had to reopen. Now it didn't crash per se; it just had to reload my timeline, which to me tells me that this just doesn't have enough RAM. Now I don't remember off the top of my head how much RAM this has, but it's probably not enough. For some reason, Apple always refuses to give their phones any good amount of memory, of RAM. Now, storage is really good on this. You have 64 gigs of storage, which is still perfectly acceptable. 128 gigs, you could argue, should be the minimum, but 64 is fine, and you have 256 and other options like that. So, the storage configurations are fine, but it just doesn't seem to have enough system RAM because it often will reload apps. And there is no amount of optimization you can do that will really take care of that. And that's kind of the way that it felt. So while the iPhone experience is very good in terms of day-to-day responsiveness, and especially if you get a phone with a higher refresh rate display, like this doesn't have that, but it is very buttery smooth. Like, I've never had any problems with lag or hiccups. Like, it's an iPhone. It's what you'd expect. You would have to be running like an iPhone 6 or something at this point to have it lag. And the iPhone 12 is, well, more than twice as good as the iPhone 6, to say the least. So performance is what you'd expect. I haven't had any problems with that, so nothing to complain about there. But to be fair, a lot of phones that I've tested as of late, like the Note 9, Note 10, haven't had any issues with that. It's not like the days of 2016 when things like the Note 7 and the S7 Edge lagged and where Android had issues. Those days are pretty much over, but iPhone's still very smooth, and unlike a lot of older iPhones, like I mentioned, there's no issues with forced closes or anything like that. The phone hasn't crashed. It's been very reliable. So while the RAM isn't quite enough, you are going to have issues with certain apps reloading whenever you try to call them back up again. But other than that, you're not going to have any problems. And it still isn't as bad as it is on older Android phones. Although I will say that my Note 7, which is a very old phone with only 4 gigs of RAM, it can still call up apps pretty easily. Like, here's YouTube. If I pull this up, there we go. It immediately popped up exactly where I was. So, that's something where a little bit more RAM could definitely make the difference on the iPhone 12. So if you're trying to do, 5 different apps at once and switching, again, not at once, but switching back and forth between them, then you might have a little bit of hiccups and you might have to reload some of those apps, and it's going to be a little frustrating, but other than that, the performance will be just fine. So, and since we have an OLED screen now, black wallpapers, which I've always used black wallpapers, look beautiful. I don't know if I mentioned that before. So, all of that is really good. Performance is really good. 5G is really good. AT&T's 5G is actually pretty good. I'm in a pretty small town in the middle of central Illinois, and I still managed to have really good 5G service with this, which is pretty good. Now, I don't have AT&T, so I was only testing this for a brief period of time, but no complaints there. So, again, that is definitely something where if you want to pop on the 5G bandwagon, this is probably the phone to do it if you are an iPhone or Apple lover, if you enjoy fruit-based phones. So, well, now let's talk about the battery and the whole system with charging and all that. Now, as far as charging it, well, if you charge it, you can't listen to music with wired headphones at the same time because there's no headphone jack. But of course, you're probably used to that when it comes to iPhones. You can get the little adapter for like 10 or 15 bucks, And you can get like weird little adapters that give you like two lightning ports, and then you can then have an adapter into that. It's a whole mess, but you can do it. But the good news is that you have wireless charging now. So if you want to listen to music, you could have the adapter plugged in, your wired headphones plugged into that, and then you could have this sitting on a wireless charger on your bedside table, and you could be laying in bed and the cord could still reach your ears just fine. So that is nice. Wireless charging and wired charging are perfectly fine. I didn't have any issues with them being too slow or anything like that. Now, I didn't use this with the Apple brick. I simply just plugged this into my Samsung fast charge bricks with a lightning cable. I have an iPad charger now, but I haven't tried it with the iPad charger. But normal charging has been working just fine. I haven't had any reasons to not use it. So charging has been no problems. I haven't had any issues with that. It charges fast enough for my liking. Could be faster, of course, but it is what it is. And you can do little tricks to make it charge faster, like using an iPad brick or buying a faster charger. And, so there's a lot of things you can do. This does support faster charging than the older iPhones. So that will be an upgrade. If you buy one new, you're not going to get a charger in the box or headphones or anything really. So I believe the cord that you're going to get in the box is Lightning USB-C, so you have to buy a USB-C brick, but those are pretty easy to find, thankfully. It's stupid that you have to buy all that crap separately, but it is what it is. So, yeah, charging has been really good. The battery life has been really good. I haven't had any issues, but ever since the XR, these iPhones have been really good with battery life. So, one thing that's always been amazing with iPhones is standby time. So you can go to bed with this thing at 100%. You can see it's pretty much at 100% right now, and it's been sitting here, and I've been using it and letting it sit for hours, and it drops like 3%, like nothing even worth mentioning. So if you're the kind of person where you like to charge your phone before you go to bed, so that way you don't leave it charging all night, you can go to sleep with it at 100%, and you can wake up and you can just walk straight out the door without even thinking about it, because your phone's going to be on 95, 96%, and who cares about 5% here or there? That 95 is easily going to get you through the rest of the day. So the battery on this is an absolute beast. Obviously, it's not going to be as much of a beast as the Pro Max, but it's still really good. Now, if you get the Mini, it's obviously going to be less, but the standard iPhone 12, the battery life is fantastic. I found it to be pretty much just as good as my Note 9, give or take a few percentages here and there. So, even though the battery on this isn't incredibly huge, this is one area where Apple's optimization really kicks in. Because you can see this is a 89%. It's been pretty sick in terms of battery life. So even if you get one that's been used for a year, because again, these phones are only a year and a half old, even if you get one of these that's been used for a year that isn't on 100% battery health, I still can't see how you wouldn't get through a day unless it was a defective battery or unless the person just really beat it into the ground. So you shouldn't have any problems with getting the battery, with getting good life out of the battery. And even if you don't, they're not the worst batteries in the world to replace. You can obviously do it through Apple. Apple stores are obviously everywhere. So no matter what, you'll be taken care of, no problems. So battery life is really good on this, and I see no reason to be worried about battery life. So if you have an older iPhone and your battery is crap, you have an iPhone 6S or something like that, and it's really old and the battery's crap, you never got it replaced, and you're wondering, should I get mine replaced or should I get a new iPhone? If I get a new iPhone but I get a used one, is it going to be one that has the same problems as my old phone? I seriously doubt it. You shouldn't have any problems there. So battery life on this is really good, and I love it. So love it, love it, love it. Very much enjoy that. So far, even though I'm generally not considered to be an iPhone fan, it sounds like I'm gushing about this thing. So why do I not like it? Or at the very least, I like it, but why do I not like it enough to put my SIM card in it and make it my daily driver? Well, first of all, this is locked to AT&T, so I can't use it on Mint Mobile. So my fiance is actually selling this to a friend of ours, and I'm only using it briefly because the friend of ours hadn't paid for it yet, and he was done using it. So that's why I was able to do this review, and that's why I was able to use it and set it up for about a week. So this is all my information on it, obviously, but That's that. So I can't use it. But let's say that that wasn't the case. Let's say that this was an unlocked one. Would I use this? And the answer is no. And there's a couple things that I don't like about iOS and about the iPhone ecosystem that just kind of turns me off from the platform in general. But I'm going to try to make it a little bit more tailored to this specific device because this isn't just an iPhone video. This is an iPhone 12 video. But again, that is part of it. So the things that I don't like. Well, first of all, one of the things that I don't like is what I mentioned earlier, which is the fact that the back is not easily replaceable. Now, I like to use my phones without cases a lot. And I'm very paranoid that the one time I'm going to drop it, it's going to break the back. And I'm not interested in paying $400 to replace the housing on the phone. Now, sure, I could fix it myself, but good luck trying to get the housing at a reasonable price. And of course, there's so many things you have to move inside. These phones are crazily over-engineered on the inside, and that just makes them a lot more difficult to repair unnecessarily, and I'm not a fan of that. Also, a lot of this is kind of moral. Apple's anti-repair practices that they've been doing with the iPhone 12, the iPhone 11, iPhone 10, going all the way back to the iPhone 5S, has been really bad, and I don't want to support it. Now, technically, if you buy a phone secondhand, you could argue you're not doing that. So I guess you could argue that. But it's just another reason why I'm not really swayed by the Apple ecosystem. And also, I'm a Note guy. I love having the S Pen, and the iPhone doesn't have an S Pen. The Apple Pencil does not work on the iPhone. There have been rumors of the Apple Pencil being supported on the iPhone for years now, and it's never actually come true. So that is one thing. And one other thing is that there's that bug I mentioned with the RAM, how it sometimes closes out of apps. And the other thing is that iPhones are just expensive. Like, yes, this is part of it. This is a really good phone, and there's a reason why it's expensive. And Galaxy Notes do generally tend to hold their value as well. Like a standard Galaxy Note 20 is about the same price as an iPhone 12 on the refurbished market. Uh, but unless you buy refurbished direct from Samsung, in which case, well, that's just about a few dollars less than buying an iPhone 12 brand new. So that does mean that whenever I have an iPhone, the fact that I don't immediately fall in love with it kind of gives me an incentive to sell it off to somebody because iPhones are always in demand and buy a cheaper device that I personally would prefer. So, you know, but hey, that's pretty much it. There isn't really much else that I dislike that I can think of off the top of my head. And when you've got all those positives and very few negatives, like I mentioned, just iOS being closed off, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that I can't just plug this into my computer and drag and drop files onto it like every other phone that I've ever owned. I don't like that. Apple does have the My Files app. That is very nice, but it's not really all that helpful. And, it's also the ecosystem of professional apps in terms of being able to edit thumbnails and all that. Google integration's a little spotty. There's not much incentive for a YouTuber to really want to use an iPhone as a daily driver, but it is a good phone. And if there is any iPhone that's come very close to swaying me, it's the iPhone 12 because I do really like this phone, and that was an incredibly short list of negatives. Now, sure, the headphone jack would be a negative too, but this Galaxy Note 10 Plus doesn't have one either. So if I bought a Galaxy Note 20 at the same time that this was available, compare apples to apples, no pun intended, then there's no headphone jack. Or if you compare this to a Google Pixel 4 or 5, again, no headphone jack. So it's not, Apple kind of did it first, technically Motorola did, but, they really popularized it. But, that's not the end of the world. I can use a dongle, so that doesn't really bother me as much anymore as it would. Now, one other thing that I forgot to mention is with the Face ID. Now, Face ID does work very well. You can see works just fine. But the problem is that there was an update sent out to Face ID that was supposed to make it work better if your face was covered, if your mouth and nose were covered, specifically regarding face masks. And I'm going to simulate this by covering up my mouth, not even my nose, but just my mouth with my hand, and I'm going to see if Face ID works. So, you can see. Face ID does not work. So I don't like that. Now, again, that's not as big of a deal anymore because I'm fully vaccinated. I don't usually wear a mask anymore unless someone specifically asks me to, or if I'm in a place that requires it. So I just kind of do it depending on where I am. But when I am in one of those places, I can't unlock my phone via the face, and there's no fingerprint sensor anywhere on this, which means I have to just put in a pin, and that's a little annoying. Whereas with the Note 9, at least in this case, and on the case of the Note 10, it's on the front, I can just unlock with a fingerprint. Or in the case of an older Note, well, including the Note 9, there's an iris scanner. So you can see how this unlocks with my eyes, with my irises. Sorry, this is kind of off camera, but I'm trying to, it's really hard to demonstrate this because the camera's in the way, but, so if I cover my face, again, this is a really weird angle. You can see, even though my mouth and my nose were covered, it's still unlocked via the irises. And I did try this off camera. It actually did get it immediately. It's just because I'm trying to go by the camera and everything where it's looking a little funky. But, oh, the colors look really weird. So, there is, it did look like it was really slow and like Face ID would be faster, but an iris scanner does have the benefit of working even when your face is covered because it just needs to see your actual irises. Now again, newer Samsungs got rid of that, so you could argue, well, that's not a problem, that's not an issue, or that's not a concern anyways, but it is something to note because there are devices out there that do fill that gap. So Face ID is probably some of the best in the industry. It's a lot faster than it was on the old iPhone 10 and 10R. So if you have an iPhone like 10R or something like that, Face ID does work. It felt to me like this was a little bit faster than the 10R, but without doing it side by side, it didn't feel like there was any difference. So yeah, that is pretty much that. So should you buy the iPhone 12? Well, the iPhone 12, if I open up a couple different prices, you can buy this exact iPhone 12, a blue 64 gig, but you can buy it unlocked for $729 direct from Apple, and that's brand new. Or if you're willing to go refurbished, you can get that same model for just a hair over $500 refurbished. So you have plenty of different options. And one interesting thing to note is that is actually the same price as the $500 is actually the same price as a brand new iPhone 11. So you can pay $729 for this brand new, or you can pay $500 for an iPhone 11. And is that worth the price disparity? Now, if you're comparing a refurbished one of these to a brand new 11, to where they're both about $500, then, in my opinion, easily get the 12. Get the 12, get the 12, get the 12. Even if you want the brand new unboxing experience, still, just ignore that, get the 12. The 12 is better than the 11, hands down, if for no other reason that you have the 5G to future-proof yourself a little bit. So, and I believe the 11, I'm pretty sure has a telephoto instead of an ultra-wide, so I believe that is another upgrade as well, but don't quote me on that. I've never had an 11. I could be wrong about that. But if you are wanting to pay the full $729, it's still worth it because, an iPhone 13 is, I actually don't even know how much an iPhone 13 is. Let me look this up real quick because I actually don't know how much a 13 is. So let's see together. So it's $729 for an iPhone 12. Let's go back and look at the 13. So how much are you saving from going to the 12 versus the 13? Of course, they got that green. Yeah. Just let me see the price. Okay, don't care. I want to see the price. Don't care. I want to see the price. Buy. Okay, buy iPhone 13. Normal 13. We'll go blue just for the sake of consistency. Okay, so this starts at $128. That's interesting. And this is $800. Okay, from $799. Okay, so actually, that kind of doesn't make sense now that I'm looking at this. Oh no, this says $829. Why did it say... That was weird. Oh, because that's with the trade-in. Okay. So no trade-in, just buying it. Yeah, so $829. So you pay $100 more for the iPhone 13. So honestly, if you're buying new, you're buying it from Apple and you're wondering if you should save the $100. Honestly, if you're gonna bother, I would say probably just go for the 13, because if you're gonna buy an older device, buy it refurbished or used, because $729 is not an amazing deal for this, but $500 is a really good deal. So if you are buying this, buy it for the 500, get it refurbished, and for that price, this gets an easy recommendation from me. Easy, easy, easy. That is a very, very good price. Now, if you're tight on cash and you don't care about 5G, then you could certainly get an iPhone 11 for cheaper, or you could get, iPhone 11 for cheaper if you go refurbished on that, or you get an iPhone XR for less than $300. So for most people, I honestly think the XR is still one of the best values, because most people don't need that second camera. Most people don't need 5G. Most people don't need the nicer screen, even though it is very nice. But I don't know. That's kind of a tough sell. But so for me, if I was buying an iPhone and I had $500 to spend, I would gladly pick this, because this is a very, very good phone, and it has a great screen. The build quality is excellent. The camera's fantastic. It's incredibly fast. It's got 5G. It's everything you expect from an iPhone, but better. So, and this blue color just really does it for me. I love this blue. Blue phones. I love blue phones. And this is gorgeous. Now, of course, you have a bunch of other colors, but who cares, because they all suck. Get the blue one. Anyways, this is Intellitech Studios, and this was my full in-depth review of the Apple iPhone 12 and how well it holds up in 2022. And the answer is, it certainly does, especially if you're willing to buy secondhand or refurbished. You could save a good chunk of change. I mean, come on, $500 refurbished, even probably like $550 refurbished, depending on where you buy it, versus, $730 new. That's a good amount of savings, that's $200. So you could theoretically buy this refurbished instead of new, and then use the money to get yourself a watch and some AirPods. So you've got a good amount of options, or even a laptop. So anyways, that's my recommendation. If you are shopping for a 5G iPhone, this is the one to get. And if you like I mentioned, if you don't really need 5G and you don't really need the second camera or anything like that, look for the iPhone XR. Definitely check out the XR if you still really want this bezel-less design, but you don't really care if the bezels are thicker. You just want the notch and that whole new iPhone experience. You want to upgrade from your old iPhone 5S or 6, and you want something kind of nice that'll last you a few more years. Look into the XR as well. So, this was Intellitech Studios signing out. I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have an iPhone 12, let me know how you enjoy it and what your thoughts are on it in the comments below. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing. And thank you for hitting the bell. So, anyways, I will see you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace.